At 88 years old, country music legend Bill Anderson has finally opened up about something fans never expected to hear. Not just memories from the road. Not another story about the glory days of Nashville. But something far more personal. Something tied to the late Jimmy Capps, a man whose fingerprints were quietly all over country music history for more than 60 years. Behind the lights of the Grand Ole Opry and behind some of the most famous songs ever recorded, there was a friendship that very few people truly understood. And now, decades later, Bill Anderson is finally talking about it. But why did he wait so long? And what was the one thing he could never fully bring himself to say out loud? To understand why Bill's words matter so much, you first have to understand who he is. Born in Columbia, South Carolina, and raised near Atlanta, Georgia, Bill Anderson never looked like someone destined to become one of the most respected figures in country music history. He studied journalism at the University of Georgia and worked as a radio DJ just to help pay his bills. Then, at only 19 years old, he wrote a little song called City Lights. That song found its way to Ray Price, who recorded it in 1958 and turned it into a #1 hit. Overnight, a teenager from Georgia suddenly became one of Nashville's hottest young songwriters. The success came fast. Bill signed with Decca Records, and by 1961, the Grand Ole Opry invited him to become a member. He was only 23. Over the years, he built a career most artists could only dream about. 37 top 10 hits. Songs recorded by legends like George Strait, Brad Paisley, and Vince Gill. Fans gave him the nickname Whisperin' Bill because of his soft, almost conversational singing style. Nobody else sounded quite like him. But here's what made him different. Bill Anderson never acted bigger than the music itself. And maybe that is exactly why his words about Jimmy Capps now carry so much weight. Because Bill wasn't speaking from a distance. He lived through the history he was talking about. He stood in those backstage hallways. He shared those stages. He watched country music evolve from inside the room itself. So when someone like Bill Anderson speaks emotionally about another musician after all these years, people pay attention. And what he revealed about Jimmy Capps changes the way many fans now see him. Jimmy Capps came from humble beginnings too. He was born on May 25, 1939, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and grew up nearby in the small town of Benson. Music grabbed hold of him early. At 12 years old, he picked up a guitar, and from that moment on, it became part of who he was. Nobody forced him into lessons. Nobody pushed him toward a career. He simply heard something in the instrument that spoke directly to him. And once he started playing, he never stopped. By the time he reached his teenage years, people already knew there was something special about him. Not just local talent. Real talent. The kind that makes experienced musicians stop what they are doing and stare. Then came the moment that changed his life forever. At just 19 years old, Jimmy auditioned for the legendary Louvin Brothers. The duo was already famous for their emotional harmonies and gospel-influenced sound. They were respected across all of country music. And after hearing Jimmy play, Charlie Louvin personally asked him to join the band. Think about that for a second. A teenager from a small North Carolina town suddenly stepping onto one of the biggest stages in country music. In December 1958, Jimmy Capps made his first appearance at the Grand Ole Opry, playing guitar on Knoxville Girl with the Louvin Brothers. He was only 19 years old. Nervous. Unknown. Standing under the bright lights of the most famous country music stage in the world. But what nobody realized then was that he would still be connected to that stage more than 6 decades later. And this is where Jimmy's story becomes almost unbelievable. By the late 1960s, he had become one of the most trusted session guitarists in Nashville. In 1967, he officially joined the Grand Ole Opry House Band, and from there, his career exploded quietly behind the scenes. At the peak of his career, Jimmy averaged more than 500 recording sessions every single year. 500. That means he was recording music almost every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And the songs he played on became part of country music history itself. His guitar could be heard on Stand By Your Man by Tammy Wynette. He played on He Stopped Loving Her Today by George Jones, a song many still call the greatest country recording ever made. His guitar was there for The Gambler by Kenny Rogers, for Elvira by the Oak Ridge Boys, for Amarillo by Morning, and for countless recordings by Reba McEntire, Alan Jackson, and Conway Twitty. The list feels endless. Yet somehow, most fans never knew his name. Why? Because Jimmy never chased attention. He called himself the man in back. In fact, that became the title of his autobiography years later. He believed his job was not to steal the spotlight. His job was to make the artist sound better, to support the song, to lift the emotion. That kind of humility is almost impossible to find in the music business. But according to Bill Anderson, that humility was exactly who Jimmy really was. 4 years, Bill and Jimmy worked side by side. Jimmy regularly played in Bill's band. The two traveled together, recorded together, and spent years around each other backstage at the Grand Ole Opry. They also appeared together on Country's Family Reunion, the long-running RFD TV show hosted by Bill Anderson. Over time, their connection became deeper than just music. And this is the part Bill says people never truly understood. Jimmy Capps was not only a brilliant guitarist. He was the emotional center of almost every room he walked into. During stressful tours, when tempers flared and exhaustion took over, Jimmy stayed calm. During difficult recording sessions, when artists became frustrated and producers felt pressure, Jimmy steadied the room. Young performers arriving nervously at the Opry found comfort in him. Veteran stars trusted him completely. He treated everybody the same way, whether they were famous or unknown. But there was something else too. Something quieter. Something sadder. According to Bill Anderson, Jimmy spent much of his life carrying other people emotionally while hiding his own struggles behind a smile. He became the support system for countless musicians, friends, and performers. But very few people realized how much weight he quietly carried himself. He rarely talked about his own pain. Rarely complained. Rarely let others see when he was hurting. Instead, he focused on helping everyone else feel okay first. And maybe that is the detail Bill struggled to talk about for so many years. Because behind the legendary recordings and the steady smile was a man who quietly carried loneliness most people never noticed. Bill Anderson, who built a career writing deeply emotional songs about heartbreak and loneliness, admitted that musicians often live with a kind of isolation the public never sees. Crowds cheer for them. Fans celebrate them. Yet behind the scenes, many carry enormous emotional weight in silence. According to Bill, Jimmy was one of those people. And suddenly, the image of Jimmy Capps changes. He was not just the guitarist behind the stars. He was often the steady hand holding everything together while quietly hiding his own struggles from the world. There's another part of Jimmy's story many fans overlook too. Beyond performing, he also worked as a producer. He helped shape recordings for Charlie Louvin, the same man who first gave him a chance. He worked with Jan Howard and the Wilburn brothers as well. That says something important. Artists trusted him not only with music, but with emotion. With their stories, with the sound attached to their legacy. And even after his passing, the honors kept coming. In 2024, part of Interstate 40 in North Carolina was officially named after Jimmy Capps. Think about that image for a moment. A highway stretching across the same state where a small-town boy first picked up a guitar decades earlier. A road carrying his name long after he was gone. For a man who spent his life avoiding the spotlight, it became one of the most powerful tributes imaginable. But maybe the most emotional honor came from the Grand Ole Opry itself. Jimmy Capps played lead guitar in the Opry House Band for more than 61 years, longer than any musician in the program's history. Week after week, decade after decade. Through changing generations, changing trends, and changing sounds, Jimmy remained there in the background, helping shape country music without asking for recognition. In 2018, the Grand Ole Opry renamed its rehearsal space the Jimmy Capps Music Room. Not a flashy award. not a temporary tribute. A permanent place inside the building itself carrying his name forever. And when Jimmy passed away on June 1st, 2020, at the age of 81, country music lost more than a guitarist. It lost a quiet foundation that had supported generations of artists and songs. That is why Bill Anderson's words now feel so important. Both men came into country music during the late 1950s. Neither built careers by chasing fame. Bill wrote songs that connected with ordinary people. Jimmy played guitar in a way that supported everyone around him. One worked through lyrics. The other worked through sound. But both understood something many modern artists forget. The music mattered more than the attention. Even now, at 88 years old, Bill continues making sure Jimmy Capps is remembered properly. Not just as a talented musician, but as the kind of man who made every room feel steadier simply by walking into it. A man who spent more than 60 years quietly shaping the soundtrack of people's lives without ever demanding applause for himself. And maybe that is the real reason Bill Anderson finally broke his silence. Because he knows people often remember the voices at the front of the stage while forgetting the quiet figures standing behind them. But behind some of the greatest songs country music ever produced stood Jimmy Capps, playing guitar with the same calm dedication night after night, year after year, decade after decade. And once you know his story, you never hear those songs quite the same way again. See